We are in year 3 of the PlayStation 5 life cycle, and there's now plenty out there for gamers searching for a great narrative-based experience. Hey everyone, welcome to Play, Rank, Share, the show where I play the marquee PlayStation 5 titles, create an ever-evolving ranking of the best PlayStation 5 games, and share my opinions with you. My name is Tyrus, and this video is my list of the top 10 story-driven games on the PlayStation 5. I did my best to make a varied list covering different genres and to include some smaller titles. Please keep in mind this list is focused solely on story, so some excellent single-player games, like Returnal, were excluded due to their lack of focus on the story. What's your favorite story in a PlayStation 5 game? Be sure to leave a comment below, and with that out of the way, let's jump in. Developer Supermassive Games has filled a great hole in the industry, telling narrative-focused horror games with expansive branching paths. Their latest blockbuster, The Quarry, can be rough around the edges from a gameplay perspective, but the choose-your-own-adventure style of narrative with a red carpet cast leaves plenty of replayability for horror fans. It's the last night of summer camp, and the camp counselors of Hackett's Quarry are left alone to their own devices. However, these teens quickly learn that their send-off to summer is going to become a nightmare, as the woods are haunted by supernatural forces. Your choices will determine whether all 9 playable characters live or die, and I found myself connecting with the cast and lamenting when I made choices that led to their deaths. Fans of horror will enjoy exploring the winding nature of the narrative in The Quarry. How far will you go to save your family? A Plague Tale Requiem explores these concepts, where you play as Amicia, protecting her younger brother Hugo. The catch? Hugo is sick, but it's supernatural and summons the rat plague nearly wherever he goes. A hurdle to enjoying the story of Requiem is that it's a direct sequel to its 29 entry A Plague Tale Innocence. I think you can still enjoy the story of Requiem without playing the first entry, but it certainly helps to understand the context of the journey our protagonists are undertaking. Plague Tale is made by a smaller team, but has the production and depth of a bigger title. A stealth game at its core, Requiem fills a niche in the industry, and those who are looking for a story about dedication to family will have a great time with Requiem. Truly a narrative-only game, some could describe Life is Strange True Colors as a walking simulator, but I love the way it tells a small-town story over its 10-hour adventure. I think protagonist Alex Chen is one of the best written characters on the PlayStation 5, as she has the superhuman power of empathy and can vividly experience the emotions of others. Empathy might sound like a lame power, but it helps explore emotional motivations for characters throughout the game, something that isn't normally covered in the medium. It's a nice change of pace to play a game with a truly grounded setting. Most of it takes place on the same street in a small town in Oregon. Those seeking a narrative-focused game with branching paths will feel right at home with the story that True Colors has to offer. My JRPG representation for this list, Tales of Arise, tells a captivating story over its 40-hour adventure. While it leans on tropes of the genre, I think this is the best told story made of this kind of cloth on the console. What I really like about Tales of Arise is how it keeps its core cast of characters small. There are only 6 characters that you can take into battle. This small cast helps you gain a deeper understanding of the various personalities of your crew and how their motivations tie into the greater plot. I have some small issues with the story of Tales of Arise. In typical anime story fashion, the plot begins to take some big leaps towards the end. However, it's hard to deny that this story is enjoyable for its runtime, and out of all the JRPGs I've played so far on the PlayStation 5, this is by far the best one. Now I'm here to put some respect on the narrative of the Guardians of the Galaxy game. Developer Eidos Montreal took the lovable dorks from the movies, sprinkled in some inspiration from the comic books, and created a lighthearted narrative that is able to be funny throughout, but still managed to tug at those heartstrings. The game does a good job to make these characters feel different enough from their movie counterparts, while still giving players what they would expect when going into a Guardians game. Fans who only know this crew from the silver screen entries will also be delighted to see new enemies not seen in the films. I think the beauty of any Guardians story is how different the characters are, and frankly, how they annoy each other, but they still step up for their friends when the time comes. I think the plot of Horizon Forbidden West is the best sci-fi story on the PlayStation 5, and is a complementing feature to what is overall one of the best open world games on the console. Picking up after the events of Horizon Zero Dawn, protagonist Aloy sets out on a grander adventure where she explores much of the western region of the United States. Fighting a fresh variety of robotic dinosaurs, you also learn more about the world of Horizon in this post-apocalyptic future and about the different tribes that are trying to survive. The deep world building in Forbidden West is what makes this one of my favorite narratives in a PS5 game. It strikes the perfect balance of focusing on current problems in the world while also exploring the history of it and giving a glimpse into what future installments will hold. Deathloop tells its story in a more unconventional way than most games. While it's light on cutscenes, there's plenty of exposition given when exploring the 4 maps. Stuck in a time loop, you play as Colt Vaughn, who has to repeat the same day over and over again until he kills 8 visionaries placed around the 4 locations. The way you complete this mission is up to you, as you explore and learn about where these visionaries will be throughout the day. If this sounds overwhelming, the game does keep track of your story progress for you, and you can always revisit it to keep track of the various plot lines. What I found so intriguing about Deathloop is that while you're on this adventure, you primarily talk to an assassin who's out to get you. While the ending is pretty much fixed once you take out the visionaries, your journey is dictated by your discoveries. Throughout my 15 hours with the game, I loved exploring the world of Deathloop and figuring out just how to break the loop. What good would any best story games list be without a mystery plot? That's just what you get in The Forgotten City, an indie game that initially started as a Skyrim mod. One of the most underrated games on the PS5, this fantasy mystery game has you teleported to an ancient city, where all of its inhabitants turn to gold if any one member sins. You are tasked with finding out who will sin and attempt to save the city. The graphics are limited, but it's able to create meaningful characters to interact with and get to know better. Throughout this small town, they have an eclectic group of characters with mixed motivations and morality, and you have to figure out just who you should trust. I spent 8 hours with The Forgotten City and I loved it, as I completed all of the side quests and eventually got the Golden Path ending on my first playthrough. But the game has replayability as there is 4 different endings for you to discover. A remake of my favorite game of all time, The Last of Us Part 1 tells what I think is one of the most endearing and depressing stories in video game history. The Last of Us probably doesn't need an introduction, but for the uninitiated, it takes place 20 years into the apocalypse. Hardened survivor Joel must escort a young girl named Ellie across the country. On this harrowing journey, the duo experiences many low points, as the players witness firsthand how far America has fallen in the apocalypse. One of my favorite parts about the story of The Last of Us is how there's always glimpses of light, these quiet moments that occur in an otherwise depressing world. I think it speaks to how it's human nature to find companionship and things to be grateful for, even when life might be at its worst. With the new show on HBO being a smash hit, now's the perfect time to jump into the world of The Last of Us. At number 1, God of War Ragnarok is the best original story in a PS5 game that I have played so far, and it's probably going to be a long time until another game exceeds that. Cinematic in its storytelling across the sprawling 30-hour adventure with Kratos and Atreus, several prominent themes are presented in this story, including the tribulations of being a parent, overcoming your past, and the cruelty in the cycle of violence. What brings the story of Ragnarok to life is the effort that developer Santa Monica Studio takes to flesh out and humanize both the side characters and the villains. An absolute treat of a narrative, in addition to some of the best gameplay you will find on the console, makes God of War Ragnarok the best complete package of a game on the PS5. Thank you for watching this episode of Play, Rank, Share. I hope you found a game that you haven't heard of before that interests you. If you like this episode, be sure to check out other episodes of PRS, including my list of top couch co-op games and hidden gems on the platform. What's your favorite story in a PS5 game? Make sure to leave a comment below, and until next time, don't stop sharing.